Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live on the 10th of November, 2017. Tomorrow is 11/11. All hail 11/11. All hail 11/11. All hail 11/11. I'll never forget when that 11/11 thing first started happening to me back in the. I was back in the 80s. It was like, how is this happening? That's back when we had the digital clocks. You'd wake up to, you had the alarm clock next to your bed. It was digital, right? It was all that the little flip thing with the light thing. It was always 11/11, 11/11, 11/11. It was kind of cool, right? It was kind of a cool vibe because it felt like, man, I'm on to something here. This is good. I'm on to that 11/11 vibe. Woo! I still like it. I still see it every now and then. But I don't really use clocks anymore. And I don't use... I have a watch that I wear occasionally, and sometimes I check my phone. But it's not like I'm dialed into time the way I was in 1986, 87, 88, even to some extent into the 90s. That's not the same. I don't have the same relationship to time. I'm in the now. It's all about the now. Speaking of time, I just thought today I'd bring in a little wave spell action. The Mayan calendar, according to Mr. Jose Arguelles, controversial figure. Today is 2 Lunar Monkey. And I was just listening to my pre-show tune I listen to every day before I get on the air. I listen to Monkey Man by the Rolling Stones. Kind of fires me up a little bit. I'm not a huge Stones fan. I like about maybe 12 of their songs. And the rest I could kind of give or take or leave. And I'm not a Mick Jagger fan at all. But hey, sometimes you gotta like what you like. And a Monkey Man is a tune that kind of gets me fired up. Well, today is Blue Lunar Monkey on the Mayan calendar. Lunar Monkey. So the wave spell for this is 2. It's 2. Because lunar in the Arguelles system, and I suppose even in the Mayan Zolkin, is about polarity and opposition. And by the way, I do integrate the wave spell into the everything reading that I've been doing a ton of over the past couple weeks. And it's a pretty interesting component when it's stacked on top of the other systems that we use. And I even play around a little bit with human design. I'm incorporating a little more human design into my readings. So if you're not familiar with human design, check it out. It's a pretty fascinating system. So today is Blue Lunar Monkey, and we're going to be a little playful today as a result of this. It's going to be Fringe Friday. I'm going to get into a few things that are kind of out there. And today's show is not going to be an hour and a half of me talking and ranting. It's going to be probably about an hour, a little over an hour today, because I want to keep it short. Well, I want to keep it short. I want to give you quality content. Quality content. So let's get into Blue Lunar Monkey. I polarize in order to play. That is the theme of the day. You polarize in order to play. Break away. Break away from the systems that are limiting you and play with it. Right? Polarize. Polarizing isn't always a bad thing. I mean, I think in terms of sort of the global scheme and the energy and the planetary dance that we have in this dimension, the reconciliation of opposites and ultimately the fusion of duality is where it's at. It's where it's at, right? Think of, again, we come from a unified place. And we are in the unified place, and the only thing that keeps us from living in that unified place is illusion and separation, and the separation of illusion, or the illusion of separation, which is difficult sometimes. In the day-to-day nitty-gritty, when we get down with stuff, right, and we have an issue in our life with certain people, what do? We polarize. We pull back and we say, well, that's them, this is me, that's their stuff, this is my stuff. And really, it's everybody's stuff. right? I mean, truly, there's no I and we. It's basically you, and maybe it's them, but it's really not up to them. It's up to you. So it's really the ultimate level of responsibility, especially for people that are intractable or situations that seem intractable and cannot be changed. The only thing that you can change about it is your relationship to it, your attitude towards it, and the thing that anchors you into suffering. That's it. And it's one of the biggest challenges we have, especially when it gets into the intimate kind of flanks in our lives. Whether it's our lovers, whether it's our ex-wives or ex-husbands, whether it's our children, whatever that is. And it's difficult, right? Because we're hoping that they can change so they can make our world better, easier, more whatever it is that we want. And there's no guarantee that will ever happen. And in fact, you should probably just completely wipe that off the map. You should just wipe it off the map. Now, the big piece is that you can wipe it off the map, but you still haven't cleaned it up. It's kind of like somebody who drinks and they stop drinking, but they haven't really changed. You know, there's just a lot of masking going on. It's kind of the same deal. What do they call it? A dry drunk or something like that? Anyway, that's where the work is. Because now you've said, okay, well, that doesn't matter. I can't expect anything out of it. It's kind of nihilistic. And then you get into the heavy lifting of, oh my God, I got to pull this thing apart, and I've got to really, really, really try to come at it from a different angle, right? Different angle of relating. The angle of relating is so important. It's so important. Once you understand the angle of relating, then you can, again, set your expectations and your sales in relation to it, right? If your angle of relating with somebody is based on a similar angle of relating, what do you have for the other person? Well, you've got relationship at some level, right? And there's agreement that takes place. But if your angle of relating is different than theirs, then what do you have? You have suffering. You have suffering. So it's at that point that you need to readjust the angle. It's pretty simple in a lot of ways. But if you want to get down into the real change, the stuff that really gets you to a point where you're moving through your life's material at a much higher level and at a much more accelerated pace, you've got to get down and deal with the nitty-gritty, the dirty. And sometimes it's not easy. I mean, and how many times have you as a person tried to resolve something inside of yourself with another person and it just going nowhere? Nowhere. Because that happens too, you know, and it happens to the best of us. It happens to the best of us. So don't give up, though. Do not give up. Because, look, sometimes there is a spiritual tonic for everything. I'd say most things. Even nihilism. Even nihilism can lead you into a state of spirituality. If you follow through with that nihilism just enough, right? Go to the end of nihilism. And what will you find? More nihilism? You might actually find something different. You might actually find the light, believe it or not. But you have to go all the way through. You have to be a committed nihilist. All right, so here we are, polarizing in order to play. Stabilizing illusion. What does that mean, to stabilize illusion? Well, first of all, illusion is the field in which we all kind of currently live in, right? We live in a state of illusion. And it's an illusion that is more present than ever before. Look at what happened in Las Vegas. It's a land of illusion. It's a land of make-believe. It's a total land of illusion. And we're still trying to piece together what happened. You know, was it a Saudi gun down? Was it, I mean, there's also a lot of evidence that shows that there was a DHS and FEMA drill going on at that time, which a lot of people aren't really talking about. But there's stuff out there that makes you scratch your head. And then there's people that have actually gotten hurt. And so, I mean, good luck with that. I mean, really, good luck with Las Vegas. Las Vegas makes 9/11 look like a Hans Christian Andersen kind of fairy tale. Las Vegas is so multi-layered that it could take us the next 10 years. Although with the internet and all the internet sleuthing, it might actually speed that up and we might get there in about a year. But then who's going to be ready for the evidence and what comes out of that. But do you see what I'm saying? I mean, that's illusion. It's the land of Chris Angel and David Copperfield. It's the land where people go there with this idea that they might actually make money. They go there with this idea that they might actually meet somebody really hot, right? And there are people that don't even use their real names in Las Vegas. They have a different name. They go there, oh yeah, my name is Chris James, and I actually work in advertising. I'm a VP of advertising for Squential. Have you heard of Squential? Oh yeah, we're doing an IPO. We're not quite there yet, but Squential is going to be huge, huge. Think of a combination of Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. That's going to be Squential. Yeah. There's a lot going on right now, and I just had to get away. I had to get away. There's too much going on, too much pressure. So I'm here in Las Vegas to meet somebody fantastic like you. Absolutely. Have you ever worked in social media before by any chance? You see, that's Vegas. That is Vegas right there. It is a symbol of the land of illusion that we're living in. What about New York and this whole thing with the guy driving the truck from Home Depot? You know, the Home Depot Muslim massacre murder. What the hell happened there? There's no blood there. There's nothing going on there. You know, the trucks were there. All the terrorist response team was there hours ahead of time. Apparently de Blasio knew it was going to happen. I mean, all this stuff, right? It's like, well, what's going on? How we dealing with that? How we dealing with that? This is crazy. You know, this is insane. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's another tragic event where these terrorists are here to put more fear into your hearts and minds. But what happened? What about Texas? I mean, come on now. Look, I know people on Facebook who have told me that they know people that died because they know somebody. You know what? Okay. I get that, right? I have empathy for that, but I also have a bit of a problem with that. Like, how well do you know that person? Number one. Number two, how well do you know, or how well do you think that portion of a family might have just said, we are really shit poor right now, and we've been offered something really kind of important and life-changing. This is like life-changing money. Like, we're going to get over $1 million to basically disappear 10 of us. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there. You know, at that point, if you're a shit poor family and you have an opportunity, or at least maybe you're just basically kind of, hanging on paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden says, look, you're going to get $1 million. You're going to get $1 million, and you're going to basically disappear. And you're going to get a new start and a new life. And you will, at some point in time, be able to contact your relatives again. But it won't be able to happen for at least another year. I mean, how many people in this country would take that? I mean, think about that for a moment. If you are in a place where you are just struggling every single week to get by, every single week is just a struggle. You're working 2 jobs. You know, your husband or your wife is working 2 jobs. You've got about 3 kids. You know, and you're 1 paycheck away from living at Motel 6. And this has been going on for years. And there's no chance of you ever getting out of that space. Yeah, you may have the love of God in your heart, and that's wonderful, right? But maybe even that's not enough to somebody who's not like completely soaked in their faith. And somebody comes along and says, look, we're going to give you $1 million. $1 million. It's going to be tax-free. Okay, tax-free. And you're going to get a new start in life. A totally new start in life. But here's what you got to do. You're going to participate in this event. And this is what's going to happen. And you cannot tell anybody that's connected to your family, within a year or 2 years or whatever that is. Would you do that? I think there are families that would. I'm not sure I would, but then again, I don't have a lot to, I don't have a lot to risk, right? I just don't. Okay. But there are people that might be much more engaged in that family thing, whatever. And I bet you they would take it. they'd look around and they'd say, you know what? You get one opportunity in life, and if you don't take it, what's the saying? If I don't do it, somebody else will. If I don't do it, somebody else will. That was George Soros. Remember that the interview on 60 Minutes? I realized that if I did not do it, then somebody else would do it. So it didn't mean that much to me at the time. Yeah, I was just doing my job. See, that's it. I realized that if I did not do it, somebody else would do it. So think about that. Now, so I'm not saying that happened, okay? But we have to think about these things along these lines. See, this is enlightened cynicism. Enlightened cynicism. And then there's so many anomalies with the Texas thing. I mean, I've seen video footage. People are just standing around. I mean, the event has happened, and you got guys standing around. You got the EMT vehicles, the sirens around. They're not doing anything. You would think that they'd be running people the hell out of there, right? Getting them out of there, getting them on, the gurneys and the stretchers, and wham, getting them out and getting them to hospitals, airlifting them out. You would think that. These guys are looking like they're on a coffee break. Every now and then you see somebody kind of run a little bit. Make it look good. Land of illusion. So what do? We stabilize illusion. Wouldn't that be great? Think of this as like the Starship Enterprise. Mr. Spock. Who would be who does the drive? It would be Scotty. Scotty or Mr. Chekhov. Because Mr. Chekhov is in charge of the warp drive and all that stuff on the deck, right? Mr. Chekhov. Use warp drive to stabilize illusion. Aye, Captain. That's kind of Scotty. They kind of sounded a little bit like Walter Koenig. Chekhov. He was one of my favorite people on Star Trek. I have to admit, I had a kind of a mini crush on Uhuru growing up. I was like, 8 or 9 years old watching Star Trek. I always look forward to watching Star Trek on TV too. And I looked at Uhuru and goes, man, that is one sexy woman. From an 8, 9-year-old kid. That's a sexy woman. She was Gene Roddenberry's girlfriend for a while. And he dumped her. He dumped her for, what's her name, the one who played, Majel Barrett, I think, on the show. Anyway. So we stabilize illusion. How do we stabilize illusion? By playing with it. Right? Do we stabilize illusion by hammering it with truth or taking the truth jackhammer? That probably destabilizes illusion. We can stabilize the illusion by playing with it. This is what this is saying here. I seal the process of magic. How about that? Yeah, now we're into that kind of Las Vegas realm, right? The Chris Angel realm. I seal the process of magic with the lunar tone of challenge. The lunar tones are always challenge. Why? Because you're into polarity. Polarity is a challenge. Polarity and duality is a challenge because you always find yourself in opposition to something instead of being with it. Instead of being conjunct with it. So it's a challenge being in opposition. I am guided by the power of abundance. So that is today's wave spell, right? It is Kin 171 on the Mayan calendar. I'll read it again. I polarize in order to play. Stabilizing illusion. I seal the process of magic with the lunar tone of challenge. I am guided by the power of abundance. Yes, indeed. Guided by the power of abundance. Speaking of abundance, I did a recording for a podcast last night. It's a blockchain podcast, and one of the folks that listens to my shows and stuff, Sarah/Lenore, she wanted me to come on the show and look at the chart for Bitcoin, which I was able to kind of dig up and kind of piece together on my own. It's a very interesting chart. So I looked at the Bitcoin chart, and I looked at the chart for Ethereum, which is a much more complicated chart. So I did the two. So what I saw with Bitcoin, which was interesting, is because Bitcoin has a Chiron in Aquarius at 17 degrees. So what do we have with the South Node? South Node is transiting through Aquarius. And it's going to hit Bitcoin's Chiron fairly soon. So it's going to be, I think, sometime in spring of next year. And to me, that represented a vulnerability in the system. Now, clearly, there's a vulnerability in Ethereum. They lost $300 million in packets. And the Ethereum chart is way more complex than the Bitcoin. Bitcoin chart is very interesting. It debuts in the sign of Capricorn, and all the planets are pretty much lined up as Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So it's all like, last quadrant. It gets birthed as this, how do we say this? As this mature and functional entity, right? It didn't get birthed at in Gemini, which would be all over the place, or didn't get birthed in Aries, although it does have Moon in Aries, the Bitcoin chart, which would be, really, really developmental and fresh and young. It comes immature. It's like a child being born with the limbic and mental system of somebody who's 18 years old. Think about that. Wouldn't that be mind-blowing? But we're going to get into some of that today. We're going to get into the story about a boy from Russia who believes he's from Mars. It's a really fascinating story. It is kind of part of the Fringe Friday that we're going to delve into on today's show. So I'm going to talk about that and his special capabilities. But before I do that, before I get into the fringe topics of today, one of the things that I wanted to touch on and talk about is what's happening with men in our society and this whole process of outing men now. And this is, I think, it's all the Jupiter and Scorpio stuff, right? I mean, this is the expansion of the dark. The expansion of the dark material. And the latest, of course, on both sides of the ledger sheet, quite different from one another, are Louis C.K. and Judge Roy Moore. The Louis C.K. thing does not surprise me at all. I was a big Louis C.K. fan for the first 2 seasons of the show. I thought the show was absolutely brilliant. He's a comic genius. His timing was impeccable. The level of dark self-deprecation was, almost unmatched. His ability to laugh at himself, the absurdities of life. There is a high quality surrealism in those shows. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And from the point of view of a single dad, he has 2 girls, and of course I have a son. The whole idea that single dad and dealing with, having your kids and not having your kids and that whole thing, I could relate to. So I remember watching the first 2 or 3 seasons, and then after that, it kind of dropped off for me, and I began to stop watching Louis C.K. And then he became really, really self-righteous, super self-righteous, and he kind of got into this. It's really, really trendy to be a man and bash men, or be a man and bash white men. It's real trendy now. It's like a really powerful virtue signal. And he was starting to get into that. And, quite frankly, I'm just not there. Theoretically, somebody died for my sins, right? I mean, that's how the theological game works. Somebody died for my sins. So am I, again, from that perspective, do I have to die to my sins over and over again via some kind of social construct because these guys are being brought out, whipped and tarred and feathered? Or even due to the fact that, say, Greg Popovich or Louis C.K. say that I should feel really guilty and shitty about who I am? No, I'm sorry. If that's how you want to feel, you want to believe, that's up to you. Okay? I'm not exploiting anybody. I'm not denigrating anybody. I do my best to be extremely fair. Sometimes, maybe I go off the road a little bit and, eventually I course correct, but we're human, right? And I try to be as fair as possible. So I I don't take kindly to this whole notion that all of a sudden one day people woke up and the white man was the devil. I just don't dig it. Sorry. Not there. Not there. Are there things that we could do better? Sure. Everybody could do better. Everybody could do better. We could all do better. Anyway, Louis C.K. now is in deep shit. His career is probably ruined. Because he took his weenie out and decided he wanted to masturbate in front of women. I don't get this. I don't get this strategy. I really don't. I've gone on a lot of dates. Some of them were really successful dates. And I've never been like a one-night stand. It was never part of my game. I can't really do it. I've tried a couple times, and sometimes, a couple times, they might have been successful. Other times, real disasters. But it's just not part of my game. I'm a 2-4 projector. We need to be friends. We need to be friends first. We need to have rapport. It's important. But I don't get this strategy. It seemed to be a common strategy, like him and Weinstein. They both employ the same strategy, which is get the women in a place that's private, or at least semi-private, and whip out your weenie and start masturbating. Like, I don't get that strategy. You know? I just don't. Like, what are they trying to get out of that? I could only think of two things. Here's what I think of. I can think of, number one, they may just think that, oh my God, isn't this hot? Isn't this sexy? Well, let me just come right over there, Louie, and help you out. Man. I mean, is that really going on in their heads? That they may just actually get lucky that some woman might think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread? Yeah, let me get over there and help you out, Louie, or Harvey. But then again, like, you know, even if they don't, what's going to happen? Well, at least the guy doing it, Louis, is going to have an orgasm. So it's a win-win for him, right? He's going to have an orgasm, or he's going to have them help him have an orgasm. He's already gotten to the result, right? He's gotten to the result. He's not caring about the process. And if somebody comes along to help him out with the process, even better. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get that. I don't understand rape. I've never understood rape. It's just if kind of a foreign concept to me. I don't get this stuff. I must be from Mars, or maybe I'm from Venus. Maybe that's why I don't get. I don't know. So now Louis C.K. and you can tell in his material, he's goes on and on and on about masturbating. It's a big part of his shtick. And you know who I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for his girls. I feel sorry for his girls. I mean, look, and I know he probably loves those kids. He probably loves those girls. That's got to be just absolutely heartbreaking for them. And good luck on seeing them now. Good luck on seeing your girls, Louis. Is it all worth it? Oh, my God. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. It's actually really sad, to be honest with you. And then we got Judge Roy Moore, the paragon of virtue, and the guy who wound up beating Luther Strange. And out of the closet, here comes the girl, woman, 40 years ago, saying that they got stripped down to their underwear at his house 40 years ago. That was 40 years ago. And it was undies. It was undies. I'm not making an excuse for Roy Moore. But this is the game now. Okay, every single day there's somebody new. There is somebody new. So and so ran their hand across my knee. 15 years ago. This is the equivalent of the new racism and the new anti-Semitism, but it's even more dangerous. And I'll tell you why it's even more dangerous. It's more dangerous because, first of all, there is no due process with any of this. It's only, for the most part, he versus she and hearsay. And I'm not into blaming the victim or anything. That's not where I'm going with this. But it can be used, certainly, as a tool, and a very effective tool, to disable just about any man. Just about any man. And without any kind of recourse, based on what that man could or might be able to use in defense of himself, or that accusation. And it could be utterly false. But as soon as it gets out there, it could be incredibly damaging. Right? So this is the new war that's going on. It's moved. You can see how it's moved. It got, and this is, okay, so keep in mind that we're dealing with the Linsky rules. We're dealing with the Linsky rules. Let me read you, let me see if I can find this. Because this is going to be perhaps a little eye-opening here. Hold on. I want to read it to you in total. I want to read it to you in total. Let me see if I can get you kind of the Reader's Digest. Okay. A tactic. This is rule number 7. A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Okay? A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. So let's go back to Black Lives Matter. Okay? Black Lives Matter, and basically the last 3 years of a tactic, which has been basically the divide and conquer between black Americans and white Americans. The ultimate duality and polarity in many ways, right? Okay. Culminating in the kneeling and the social act of the players from the NFL when they said, we're not going to kneel for the flag, right? This is the culmination of that kind of wave that really started when Trayvon Martin got killed. That's when it started. Well, guess what? That's over now. It's officially over. Do you know why? Because last night, Michael Bennett from the Seattle Seahawks stood for the national anthem. That is a clear sign that that tactic is over. Okay, that divide and conquer is over. Now, you're not going to see a lot of the racism stuff being hurled at Trump anymore. That's going to go away. What's the new tactic? The new tactic is beyond race, and it could compromise any man at this point. Right now, it seems to be kind of the pastiche between powerful Jewish men. And by the way, Louis C.K. is Jewish. His mother is Jewish. His father is from Mexico, I believe, or he's Mexican. So we have Louis C.K. We've got Weinstein. How long will it be before Woody Allen has to do the perp walk again? Remains to be seen. So it's this combination of, kind of the powerful white guy and sometimes the not so powerful white guy, and a smattering of powerful Jewish men, but they all kind of look white, right? But that said, it could spill over into any man from any race or any culture at this point. See how the target is widened? It just went from like kind of one specific group, and now all of a sudden it's wide open, right? It's open season. So here we go. A good tactic is one your people enjoy. Well, they may enjoy this one. Look what happened with the Antifa stuff over the weekend. It was just a big dud. When we looked at it, not much there. And I said Sunday could be an interesting day because the moon is in Gemini. If you want to have polarity, what do we have? We had the event in Texas. A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. The race piece was becoming a drag. It was becoming a drag. This is what happened. And now we're on to a new tactic. This is what's taking place. Okay? And today we play with the illusion. Or we play with the ability to stabilize the illusion. We polarize in order to play. To pull back and to look at the situation and make light of it and to make fun of it. To poke at it. To poke at ourselves in many ways as well. We can't take ourselves too seriously. I get into that trap sometimes. You know, and every now and then. When I do, guess what? I get knocked upside my head. That's what happens. So that's a big piece going on. I'm not sure what Roy Moore is going to do, if that indeed did happen. And who knows, maybe it did happen. If it indeed did happen, then he's got to admit it and say, hey, look, that was 40 years ago. And, in the meantime, I became a Christian, I repented, I've been married, and if you go ahead, you can find and see if there's anything else in my background. And I invite any other woman from my life to come forward if that's the case. If nobody comes forward, then, Roy Moore theoretically could be a repentant man. And here's the other thing. I'm not making excuses for Roy Moore. I'm not. He's a grown man. He can live his life. But contextually, I want to point out that 40 years ago, so what would that be? I'm 56. So it'd be 1976, right? Roughly. 1976, 1977. I guarantee you that 1976 in the South was probably not that far away from 1946 in the South. And they had very, very different sorts of customs and connections and relationships with young people. And again, I am not advocating. I'm just telling you that culturally, it was probably a very different place. Look, Jerry Lee Lewis married his cousin and she was 14. I mean, he could do that, apparently. So I'm not advocating. I'm just telling you from a cultural perspective, the idea of this is not absurd in some ways. I'm just telling you. I don't approve of it. I'm not giving Roy Moore a pass. Period. End of story. You just don't do that. Sorry. But from the Southern perspective, again, and I think really, at the end of the day, when we try to point out these hypocrisies, because clearly this is a system that is laden with hypocrisies. The whole pedophilia thing is, really coming. I mean, there's some steam happening. There's some momentum happening with the pedophilia stuff. And yet, we're getting this thing with Roy Moore and the 14-year-old girl. Again, I'm not advocating it. I'm not. I don't advocate it at all. Should never have done it. Should never have gone there. But in light of what else is out there, right? We have to be able to become aware of it. Now, it could be spun both ways. Like, oh well, isn't that interesting? We really advocate having sex with 14-year-olds. That's part of the new emergence of teen rights. Hey, Roy, maybe you want to get on board with that. That's a whole other angle. Using that piece. Here we go. This is another Rules for Radical piece. This is what Alinsky says. Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. How about that? And keep the pressure on. That's rule number 8. Rule number 8. Now, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Here we go. I think I've said enough about that. I feel like we're at a point in time where it's, we live in this fishbowl. We live in this fishbowl. It's a social media fishbowl. It is an echo chamber that's made out of titanium. So when when you shoot a bullet in an echo chamber, it just bounces around and around and around and around. So when these things come out, they can be very, very damaging and damning, and we don't have any kind of real filter or any kind of real what's what I'm looking for, protocols in some ways in terms of dealing with this now. Yeah, so here we go. Let's see what becomes of it all. It's going to be interesting what happens with Louis C.K. and how he deals. He's a Virgo, by the way. That's his sun sign, Virgo. All right, it's Fringe Friday, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things that might be a little fringy. Just two things, two fringy things. So I was bouncing around. Oh, by the way, Zero Hedge. I don't know what's happened to Zero Hedge. It's terrible now. It is really bad. Who's writing articles? Are those articles being written by AI over on Zero Hedge? They're terrible. It's like I don't even really go there anymore because there's just. But I did see an article today about the petrodollar and Trump and Saudi Arabia, and I came across a comment that really caught my eye. And the comment was, the reason why Trump is so close with Saudi Arabia is because he's a Muslim. Now, I ran that past one of my favorite people over on Facebook who is pretty connected to the Trump world in some ways. And he's a really smart guy. His name is Mark. And so I ran it past him. And he said, nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Look at his place. He's more of the kind of the Roman pantheon vanguard. And that could be true because Trump, it appears to be a Jesuit. Of course, he went to Fordham, which is a Jesuit school. So if he's anything, he might be a Jesuit. But this guy makes a really interesting and compelling argument that Donald Trump might actually be a Muslim, which would not be out of the question, by the way. So this is from Counterpunch, and it was printed on February 22nd, 2017. Now, I'm not saying Trump is a Muslim, but this is Fringe Friday. So we're going out there a little bit. This is kind of the Rings of Saturn stuff. The article was from February 22nd, this year, 2017, and the author is Liaquat Ali Khan. And the headline is, "Yes, real Donald Trump is a Muslim!" exclamation mark. This article is no spoof or fake news. Donald J. Trump, J stands for Juma, which means Friday in Arabic. Hey, Fringe Friday. Is a Muslim who converted to Islam years ago, long before he challenged President Obama's birth certificate and faith credentials. Upon conversion, Trump was awarded the title of Sheikh, which means the scholar of Islam. Here are 7 clues that Trump is a practicing Muslim. Number 1, Sheikh Trump does not eat pork or consume alcohol. No Muslim, even if they skip prayers or fasting, eats pork. And the Sharia prohibits the consumption of all forms of alcohol, including Russian vodka. As a true Muslim, Sheikh Trump loathes bacon and sausages and has not touched alcohol in his life. And of course, there's the story of his brother who was the alcoholic, and that really changed his perspective. Point number 2, President Trump does not want to disclose his tax returns. Because for many years, actually since his conversion to Islam, he has donated millions of dollars in charitable contributions to build mosques in the United States and around the world. Realizing that voters are not ready to accept his faith credentials, Sheikh Trump wisely decided to withhold his taxes from the public. His tax return from the public. Number 3, President Trump recruited numerous decoys in his cabinet to conceal his conversion to Islam. Too bad Michael Flynn, who called Islam a cancer, had to be fired. However, Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller are furnishing excellent camouflage, just before Steve Bannon left, by the way. There are unsubstantiated rumors, though, that Steve has also converted to Islam to please his boss. I'm not sure about that. Although, with Bannon, you never know. If so, Sheikh Trump might have yet to hire another Islamophobe to throw sand in voters' eyes. Point number 4, Sheikh Trump has a unique way of exposing the bigotry against Islam and Muslims, particularly in some parts of the United States. Out of his infinite wisdom, Sheikh Trump claimed that thousands of Muslims in New Jersey were cheering the collapse of the Twin Towers on 9/11. This story was a sarcastic exposure of how Muslims have been falsely blamed for supporting terrorism. Likewise, Sheikh Trump asked Kellyanne Conway to fabricate the massacre at Bowling Green to further show how Muslims can be easily blamed for fictitious terror attacks. A few days ago, Sheikh Trump himself invoked the non-existent terror attack in Sweden to continue to make the point that his Muslim brothers and sisters are systematically slandered. I don't know about that point. It's not a great one, but I'm reading it. Point 5. Soon after occupying the White House, President Trump called the Saudi king to reaffirm his faith in Islam. He also called General Sisi of Egypt, President Erdogan of Turkey, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan to make sure they all understand that the travel ban on Muslims is just a ruse to please the deplorables. Trump asked his team, but I kind of actually believe this, by the way. I kind of actually believe that part. And I'll tell you why. Because if Trump wanted to ban anybody from any country, he could do that. It was within the power. He's got the power. He didn't need anybody to pass any kind of bill or law or order. He could have just done it. There are provisions already inside of working documents that would allow him to do that. Instead, he puts up this ridiculous kind of travel ban. And everybody was just kind of scratching their heads around the whole thing. Like, really? Well, why aren't you including Saudi Arabia in this travel ban too? Of course he wouldn't. This point actually makes a little bit of sense. Trump asked his team to make an executive order that will not stand in the court of law, and federal judges would unanimously declare it unenforceable. This executive order was a masterstroke to fulfill a campaign promise, disguise the faith, and continue to allow fellow Muslims to pour into America, which he has, by the way. Again, I'm not an Islamophobe, but those numbers have not abated. They have not abated, okay? It is no wonder there were hardly any protests in any Muslim country against the travel ban. On the day of the inauguration, while President Obama and President-elect Trump were scooting in the same limousine, now this I did not see, and there's a lot of speculation on this one. And this is where the author kind of really goes out there. On the day of inauguration, an unprecedented crowd of millions. Okay, this is number 6. On the day of inauguration, while President Obama and President-elect Trump were scooting in the same limousine, Obama shared a secret with Trump. "Bring your ear close to my mouth," requested Obama. Trump did, and what Trump heard was a low whisper, "Allahu Akbar." Trump winked with his right eye, while Obama his left, and they shared a hearty laugh. Number 7, on the day of inauguration, an unprecedented crowd of millions witnessed President Trump taking the oath on 2 holy books to uphold the Constitution. Never in the United States has a president used 2 copies of the same holy book to take the oath. Neither did Sheikh Trump, given that Sheikh Trump is a very, very, very intelligent man. He came up with the machination of using 2 holy books when, of course, one of the books was ... the Quran. Over the weekend, Sheikh Trump attended the New York rally, "I Am Muslim Too," held in Times Square. Dishonest media and the failing New York Times would never be able to figure out these clues. Clueless at Real Donald Trump. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's Fringe Friday. And he has been unusually warm and cozy with the Saudis. And my good friend Mark over on Facebook said, well, he's probably really okay with moderate Islam. And maybe that's where his tolerance, his religious tolerance is taking all this. And what he wants to do is he wants to limit and eviscerate extremist Islam. So this is one of the deals Trump is making. This is where he's throwing his. So if you really look at this, right, it's kind of brilliant in some ways. What's going on in Saudi Arabia? It's regime change. They are doing regime change in Saudi Arabia. And apparently, tomorrow night on 11/11, that's when King Salman is given the crown. Crown Prince Salman is given the crown of Saudi Arabia. We're witnessing a regime change. And it's happened like that in Saudi Arabia. Very fascinating stuff. And what they do with it from this point forward is, well, I guess we'll all see. Anyway, I just wanted to take you out to the rings of Saturn. A little fringy material, something to think about. Something to think about. Maybe something a little bit different to put into your hookah and have a puff on. All right, here's another piece that ran across my radar, which I've been wanting to talk about. It's very fascinating. Some of you who are kind of out there scouring through material might be familiar with this. It's the story of a young Russian who says he was born on Mars and had been sent to Earth to save humans from an apocalyptic nuclear war. Somebody's got to do a documentary on this kid, okay? There's a documentary here that could be so utterly fascinating. I'm going to read you the story. This is from The Sun, and it's not just The Sun. There's a number of other news outlets that have run this, even though The Sun is kind of, it's kind of a tabloid. Boriska Kiprianovich of Volgograd, Russia, alleged he lived on the Red Planet before being reborn on Earth, along with others on a mission to save mankind. He kind of looks like Ian Brown from the Stone Roses. Boriska alleged he lived on the Red Planet before being sent to Earth. He claims his own race of Martians was virtually wiped out in a nuclear conflict thousands of years ago, and fears we are now heading in the same direction. Well, that's actually kind of interesting, of course, because the asteroid belt, theoretically, is Marduk, the planet that actually existed between Mars and Jupiter, and there was an interplanetary war between Marduk and Mars. Marduk, I think, is also known as Maldak. I mean, I've heard different names. So they had this interplanetary war, and apparently Marduk got completely blown up. And we have the asteroid belt, and Mars got wiped out. It didn't get blown up, but the surface area got completely destroyed. And then what happened to Mars, this is what I've heard, that Mars then took up the orbit of where Marduk was. And then Mars had been in the cradle orbit, right? Earth is in the cradle orbit of the sun. And that's where Mars had been. And as a result of the planetary evacuation or the destruction of Marduk, Mars moves into the cradle orbit. And Earth now became sort of this new entity where it would have the most efficient orbit with growing and light and all the stuff that goes along with the relationship with the sun. And as a result of that, since Earth probably did not have a moon, that a moon had to be brought into Earth orbit in order to perform functions that would be important for a planet that had a cradle orbit, like tides and all kinds of other stuff that some of which we understand and some of which we don't. So Mars was essentially the first Earth, if you think about it. Okay. So it says here, Boriska's concerns come as tensions between the U.S. and North Korea reach breaking points over trigger-happy Kim Jong-un's rapidly expanding nuclear weapons program. He warns that we will face the same catastrophic fate as his people if we don't listen to his apocalyptic warnings. Now, they've got images here of him as a kid. He's 21 now. And he says he's not the only child from outer space, claiming there are others like him who are also sent here on a specific mission to save humanity. So this would put him into the Pluto and Sag generation, and kids that are really, really philosophical, deeply philosophical. Okay. He claims that they are all reincarnations referred to as, get ready for it, indigo children, who have supernatural abilities and have survived the Martian wars. According to Boriska, many Martians are immortal and stop aging at 35. They are very tall, technologically advanced, and capable of interstellar travel. Wouldn't that be cool to stop aging at 35? I could get into that. I wish I could stop aging at 53. I'd take that at this point. He said, I remember that time when I was 14 or 15 years old The Martians were waging wars all the time, so I'd have to participate in air raids with a friend of mine. We could travel in time and space flying around. We could travel in time and space flying around in spaceships, but we'd observe life on Earth on triangular craft. Martian spaceships are very complicated. They are layered and they can fly all across the universe. Boriska's own parents are convinced their gifted son is telling the truth about his previous life on Mars. When we showed our boy to a variety of scientists, including ufologists, astronomers, and historians, all of them agreed that it would be impossible to make all those stories up, said Boriska's mother. Doctors of traditional medicine acknowledge the boy's unusual abilities, although they do not say, of course, that they believe he used to live on Mars in his past life. The 11-year-old apparently started speaking within a few months after he was born. Researchers had described him as an extremely shy young man with above-average intelligence. His outstanding knowledge of planetary systems has confounded experts around the world, including scientists. Boriska's mother is a doctor and says she knew he was special as soon as he held his head up without any support just 2 weeks after being born. It goes on to say here, let's see. She claims that he started speaking a few months later. By the age of 1.5, was able to read, draw, and paint. Boriska's mother and father didn't teach him anything about space as a child, but say he would often sit and talk about Mars, the planetary systems, and alien civilizations. They say his fascination with space became his #1 interest, and it wasn't long before he started claiming to have been born on Mars. Let me just play a little bit of audio here from this. Let's see if I can get it going. I might have to translate. Here we go. This is Boriska.
Mercury, so it's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. So there was some point, some spot on the Jupiter of different color. He doesn't remember the color, but remember there was a spot.
A spot on Jupiter.
Yes.
And you saw these planets how? How did you see them? Ask him.
А как ты видел эти планеты? Тебя спрашивают.
В пространстве.
Kind of a space.
Я плохо рисую, поэтому я точно не могу нарисовать.
Is that the sun in the middle?
А вот в серединке это Солнце?
Ну да.
Yeah?
He says he can't draw well. He's
And you
diagramming the
see
planets.
these planets from a spaceship or from the planet, or how did you see them?
А ты видела их как бы из корабля или
Ну
с
да,
планеты?
с корабля.
From the spaceship.
From a
С Марса не
spaceship.
увидишь.
You cannot
He
see
says
them
it's all from a
Mars,
spaceship.
really.
You can't
I
see them
see.
from Mars.
And did you see them before you were born?
А ты видела их до своего рождения?
На Земле?
You mean the being born on the Earth?
Or another planet?
Не обязательно до своего рождения или на другой какой-то планете.
Не, ну...
When I was flying in space, when I was living on Mars, then I saw them.
Видел.
When I was flying in the space, when I was living in Mars, then I saw them.
That's from Project Camelot, by the way. So that was a Carrie Cassidy little piece on Boriska, the Martian boy. How interesting is that? Reincarnated from Mars, life on Mars. I'm not disagreeing with it. I don't think it's impossible for somebody to have been or have that knowledge at a young age. I had some interesting stuff swirl around me when I was a little kid. You know, I was not your typical 8-year-old. Let's put it that way. So here we go, from Donald Trump being a Muslim to a group of advanced children, now adults, living amongst us with extraordinary powers, many of whom had spent lives on other planets, here to use their powers for good and save us from nuclear and or some other form of annihilation. Today, we polarize in order to play. In the spirit of the monkey, in the spirit of chewing, I wish you all a great weekend. a light-hearted, playful weekend as we move into 11/11. It'll be an interesting weekend. It seems like everything now has gone from, remember how stuff would happen on Fridays? Now it's starting to happen on Sundays. So Sunday seems to be the day. And maybe it has something to do with the desecration of the fake Sabbath, right? Because everybody knows that Saturday is really the Sabbath. Get it? Right. Saturday. Sabado. So yes, have a great weekend. And we are coming into this period where right around 11:15, 11:16, that's when we have that Mars squared Pluto. Speaking of Mars, that's when we have that Mars squared Pluto starting to get really tight. We might start to see some of it happening tomorrow, 11/11, Veterans Day. That might actually be, we might see some stuff begin to happen tomorrow. But circle the 15th, basically from the 15th through the 22nd. That 7-day period is when the Mars-Pluto and the Mars-Uranus opposition, everything gets ratcheted up during that time. In the meantime, you know what to do. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday FARcast, a little bit of Fringe Friday. And I'll see you guys on Sunday night with the live stream. And who knows what'll be happening then. All right, get out there. Play a little bit. Lighten up. Have some fun. Bang the drum. Bang the drum.